Sit down, Pam. Okay, we are now back from our break. At this point, we have in our agenda general discussions as needed. So, is there additional information that you need? Is there clarification that you need? Is there anything that you want to recommend to Ann and Park to update or look at, or something in there, any of the requests that you feel strongly about that you want them to kind of look at moving?
Make one clarification on the Special Olympics. The request for funding is really $1,339 and not $670. They were doing a comparison of their budget because of the discussion we had last year, the increase that they were requesting for the salary for that individual. We had already passed that point in discussion process last year.
We'll show that as a change. And what your contract currently is pays salary and benefits of the director. And those have changed over the years. Last year it actually changed and they absorbed it, $300 or $400 of it. This year they're asking to go ahead and fund last year's increase plus this year's increase. And then, so if you approve that increase, then we'll go back and adjust the contract to show that accordingly, because it currently shows $55,000 even, so.
How much is the total? I thought yesterday we said there was you didn't carry forward something, $500 some that we miscalculated.
That's
so
what
we
they
were
had
off.
on there. That's what they had on there originally, but the number, Pam, what was it? It was 1,369, is that what it was?
1,339.
339.
So that covers what we missed from last year?
Plus this year.
Okay, and why did the person get an increase this year? Is that 1.5%?
I would make an assumption it was the 1% request.
Okay, well, we need to verify because 2.5% is in everything else. So we need to look and figure out.
But before we put
what
that
the
number in your change.
What
Right.
should
that
it
will be
have
there.
been last year? Okay, what is the corrected amount that we really should be looking at? And then the question is, does that position get the 1.5% COLA that we're giving our staff members? Or is there some other number that we're not quite sure of?
You
And
can
I just
have,
want-
you can have Kelly
verify.
verify
You
the
just
Special
verify.
Olympics person's salary right now, and then what it would be if they received a 1%, because I don't believe that position gets a supplement.
And that would be the question, is that position, are we going to treat it the same as state employees so that whatever they're getting, governor's budget had a 1%? Is that number we're looking at? Or is it the COLA? And whichever way that we normally treat that one, and I can't remember how we normally have treated that one, but you have a point that it's not supplement. So.
Right, I would think that it was treated like a local position. But
We'll find out for sure.
we can find out from Kelly.
I have complete confidence in all of you. Okay, general conversations. Anyone that wants to start?
In regards to RCC's request, I think if we're going to apply the balance, the $21,787 or thereabout, or actually it's $22,000, that is converting a one-time expense into a recurring expense, because it goes into a health insurance.
24 of yesterday's presentation.
I just think it needs to be,
For RCCC.
yeah, RCCC says their lease, they got a better lease than what they anticipated, and
Right.
the savings was $22,000. And they were asking that to be applied to the health insurance increase, which I'm just concerned about that being a recurring expense, even though it's,
Well, the rent payment, it's in their capital, I guess. They're paying for it out of their capital budget, but it is recurring because it's
for 2 years.
for 2 years, right?
Health insurance will last.
Right, in
Yeah.
eternity.
Then
Yep.
they got a better
Right.
rate, so they're what, 20, like you said, 22,000?
Is what's left over.
If that goes in, then that becomes a recurring expense because, as you said, instead of being one
Just needs
just
to
for
be-
2 years.
Sure. Well, based on what the solution is to their space, it may be
Right.
another location or it may be the same location. So, yeah, we'll make sure that's it.
Or just
But
recognize.
if it's moved into health insurance, which is what they asked for, then it's
It's going to be recurring, but in another budget,
perpetuity in the health insurance line.
right, versus the lease line.
So I understand the lease is going to change whenever we decide plays.
Yeah, sure.
And I do want to comment, because I think we had this conversation, but I'm not 100% certain, if you don't mind interjecting, on cosmetology. They have, I believe, they said 77 high school students who participate in the cosmetology program, and 70 of them are Cabarrus County school students. And that was the reason why I personally, not as a board, personally stated that I did not feel that locating it in downtown Kannapolis made any sense. Because you've got 70 students from Cabarrus County School District that will be driving into Kannapolis City School District, and they have 7 that attend. I just think that was too much burden on those students that are attending. I think there'll be a big impact. So my suggestion was to try to find a place more centrally located in the county, and that therefore staff has been working on that. So she just commented that she met with Jay and myself, and that she didn't think the meeting ended very well. That was my point. When she said there were that many Cabarrus County school students, I don't see locating it on the edge of the county line if that's who they're serving. And they are serving a lot of Cabarrus County school students through that program. So they serve more at night, I would presume, through graduates, but nonetheless, that was the reason why.
You know, I guess the one thing that I would question is you could, you know, probably make the same argument about the Cabarrus Health Alliance. And then also, you know, depending on where those students were located, how many of them were in the Concord School District that covers the old Concord-Salisbury Road area, how many of them would be in the Northwest District that would be more in that direction. So, I mean, there are several other different factors that would affect that, I would think.
And I think there are a number of factors. That's why I wanted to look at it.
Right.
And they can find out. The program was originally housed at Central Cabarrus. So my understanding is there are a lot of students in that area that still participate because it's just a more known entity.
Right.
There's one student from Concord High School that participates. I know that. So there are a lot of students. It was my understanding that a majority were from Central Cabarrus. That would be, and if the school system were to provide any transportation, that would add to that cost too. So
Right.
I just wanted to address that because she said it didn't end the way that she wanted to, and it didn't because we weren't in a position to provide a couple $1 million
For the renovation.
for that, yeah.
Well, I guess maybe some demographics on the total program, as far as those people that are doing it as a second career or those that are high school graduates, because I understand it's a blend of quite a few different categories that are involved.
Well, and also the reasons that were given for the move to Kannapolis were not justified by the information provided. So,
And I don't know all those facts.
and it was just asked, help us get some more information, and
Right.
have you thought about these other alternatives, which they had not. And, you know, anyway.
Sounds like they've got time to do that now.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all I had in regards to RCCC.
Does anybody else want to make any comments on the Rowan Cabarrus Community College request? You can look back at the beginning of the presentation that we had. I have it on page 15 of ours is their request, their capital request and their operating budget request.
I have a question. When you were talking about the current expense with the 22,000 versus the amount, normally we tell them current expense, capital outlay, and then we have our debt service that relates to them. So are you, can you?
What I'm saying is if we're going to specifically identify that amount of money going to health insurance for employee A or employees A, B, and C, we are now going into a position of having a reoccurring expense that we're going to have to fund, or we're committing ourselves to ad infinitum. That's what I'm saying. If there is a way, if this board decides it's a $22,000 difference and sure, here's $22,000 that you can cover expenses however you want to cover it. I don't want that to be a commitment that this board is making for the rest of time. I don't want to get in the situation that the state says, well, oh, there you go, there's some more money that you can provide, and we'll back out some more. The state already backs out enough.
And if you can help refresh my memory, do we normally pay that health
I don't think so.
insurance? Or is it normally the state that pays that?
It's the state that pays that, is what I thought. So that's all I'm saying, is if we're going to take on that obligation, we either recognize it, or we say, we're not going to take on that obligation, but the difference of 22 can be applied in another area.
Okay. Do you have a
Yeah, it is. I
suggestion?
mean, some of it's already in their current operating, so it's just under their clover leaf. And you do fund some of those, I believe she told you, it's mostly capital, buildings, facilities, cleanup, but you do have some positions in there that you help fund, I believe, the custodians, I think she said. And so if it's health insurance for them, I'm not sure. So we'll find out.
I just
better
look at that.
clarification.
And in regards to your last comment, I thought that was a comment made by Mrs. Klutz in the Cabarrus County school system, not in RCCC.
For the custodians?
But
Yeah, that's what I said. We'll
all I'm
check.
just saying is let's understand what we're committing to.
Sure.
I think that's a very good point. We might want to put it into something that is non-recurring, into recurring, or just fund the lease,
Just
the
fund
increase in the
exactly.
lease, the way the increase of the lease
Yeah.
flushes out. Anybody else, do you have any other comments or questions or clarification you need at this time for Rowan Cabarrus?
No. I agree with Commissioner White. That's it.
I do too. Anybody, I just want to make sure if there's anything else you want to talk about. Okay, you want to look at Kannapolis City Schools then? And their request? So, my first question is going to be, to help me understand. So you talked about that amount for the school nurses. Is that additional funding that's going to Kannapolis City Schools? Or is that just money that's going to the school nurses in the separate, towards the health lines?
What we were discussing is if we pull out school nurses from the equation of what we have to even up, which it sounds like is a smart thing to do regarding charter school effects, then we would need to provide another $31,690 to Cabarrus County Schools. And make
To
them-
Kannapolis
Excuse me,
schools.
Kannapolis, KCS.
That would be
KCS
additional
would need
money to
another
the schools,
$31,690.
Not to the program.
Okay, right. That's what I want to make sure of. That would be money, funds going to Kannapolis City Schools, and it would go in their operating.
Technology.
Wherever you want to put
Technology.
it, you can, yeah. we would
Considering
Going
your,
technology, 'cause
considering
it's
what your
one-time money.
discussion was today.
No, it's
No,
not
it was
one-time money.
reoccurring.
It's reoccurring, and we would recommend that it go into technology.
Okay,
Because that would help with the
okay.
cameras and
So
stuff.
is everybody good with that amount? And they will go ahead and move that into technology for their funding for technology? Okay, so it looks like we have consensus that that amount of money would go into technology. Thank you for protecting technology, I appreciate that.
And then in all future calculations, we will include the total amount that we're giving on behalf of school nurses. And that should be more realistic of what we're really paying for them.
Yeah, and as long as that is nowhere from this point forward, school nurses will not show up in either of those budgets, and it only shows up in the Health Alliance budget, that was the whole point.
Right.
So from this point forward, it's a new reality for what our ADM number is, and we know, and they've acknowledged that the only reason that number at this point in time is going down is because, in this just basic calculation, it's because the school nurse is coming out. If we don't fund growth, that's different. But as far as this goes,
Yeah, but actually, for
We have a
the
new
local
baseline.
definition, it's actually, you're showing 1608.
Local
Right.
definition.
I get you.
If you include the
but
nurse.
we want to make sure that, what's being reported. I guess what's
Right.
going to happen, and we're going to see this every year, is that then, in that case, that you're going to have to break it out so that
Right.
we don't get hit locally saying that we're not funding things. But in reality, we want to make sure that what they're reporting is the lower number, because that's the amount they need to send to charter schools, not the amount plus the school nurses.
Correct. And so in your budget book, it'll be similar to this with the school nurses all in one line. But
And-
that funding would have been in the CHA budget.
And that was my point, which I know you know, because we talked about it in ad nauseam. I know, but the whole point was to clean it up.
Correct, and this was haunting me all last year because I couldn't get it to go away, and I'm like, it's got to go. It's not working.
I would not want you to be haunted.
So the $31,000 is going to go towards their technology request of the 426.
That'll go into their operating budget. You
For it.
designated it as technology. This year, they can spend it on that. Next year, it'll still be there.
Right.
It'll be recurring.
Okay.
Any other comments? You may need to take a minute to look at your notes. If you could add that number in and redo this for us so that we have a, based on the, I guess, change row and Cabarrus to show just the lease amount so that we know what that is
Yeah.
for now.
We haven't gotten that.
And then,
We don't have that number.
It's $8 and then goes
Yeah,
to
$8, whatever it
I mean,
is, by the square footage.
they
yeah.
should be able to get that to us because they quoted it tonight and they knew pretty much what it
Yeah.
was. And then change that technology amount for Kannapolis City Schools so that tomorrow what we're looking at is reflective of that.
And on their technology numbers, let's make certain our numbers are, match up correctly. Please, sir. Or madam.
Any other questions about, or comments, or observations on the Kannapolis City School budget? And just verify their charter school numbers and what that does to their budget, which I know you already know that, but just to reiterate. Because they haven't asked for it. If it's negligible, then I can understand why they wouldn't ask for something if they're not really spending that much money out. I don't know. I would think, though, that this new one, if it's hitting that much in,
We asked
you
them.
know,
I think
and-
it's less than 10.
but I guess I should have asked this, the 90%, but 90% that live in Cabarrus County, are they certain that those are in Cabarrus County schools versus Cabarrus County?
Well, with this new charter school opening up, all bets are off on what Kannapolis charter number is.
That's what I mean. So somehow they need to find out, if they're looking at Cabarrus County geography versus the two school systems, it could be that Kannapolis is going to be impacted and they just haven't realized it yet.
They have to report the addresses, don't they?
Yeah, Kelly made a comment that they gave her zip codes, and a zip code was a Charlotte zip code, but the person lived in Cabarrus County.
Yeah.
So the zip code's not working.
Yeah,
Well, we've
because
got
towards Davidson.
Davidson and
there, so-
Huntersville over it.
Highland Creek,
Highland,
you got
yeah.
Cabarrus Woods.
I suggested a PIN
It's
number on the
Skybrook, so-
property. We could have the tax office tell them where they were.
I mean, they're gonna need to do
Bothersome.
something, you're right, to be a little bit more particular, so. For furniture, I mean, Kannapolis had 15,000 in there, does that just come out of their capital if they choose to spend it that way, or if they chose to renovate the EC kitchen for $10,000, or to put bookshelves in Kannapolis Middle? They have flexibility with the funding we give them that they can take care of that and we don't have to worry about any of that?
Yeah, I think they do, but I don't know if that's in their expansion or their,
Right, but they only have 100,000. So
Right,
if they
total.
can't get the cameras, that was the first thing they were going to use their money for. But maybe they have the flexibility now with the cameras, so that won't be such an
The
issue.
furniture wouldn't be in the technology pot.
Correct. I just meant prior to what we did
yeah.
for technology funding, they were going to use that $100,000 to buy those cameras for the buses.
See, on their priority list. They were-
That fine line between what's technology and what's not technology.
Yeah, and they're going to have to break that out to what their capital numbers are and what their technology numbers are. So that they need to do that so that what they present to us is a similar format of what we're requiring of Cabarrus County Schools, to break the two numbers out. Okay. Cabarrus County Schools. Who would like to start? Chris, do you have any questions? If there are comments, observations? unusually
I didn't know if
quiet.
you're going out.
Oh, no, he said he didn't have anything. You can start, or you can.
Well, they're not getting enough money on maintenance, I can tell you that now.
I'm still confused about the pass-through of the charter schools. I wasn't quite understanding that. Can you explain that?
Well, I mean, again, my big concern about it is that if they have 700 and some students that are new students, how are they really adjusting for it? I mean, that's where I'm having a problem, because if there's 100 of them that currently aren't being funded, then, you know, that's 100 that you do need to fund as far as their charter school numbers go, because that's additional money going. But I don't want to pay for them now and pay for them again, and that's where I was struggling with. And I know we've had this conversation, but go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead.
The short of it is, let's just assume that it's $1 per student. Cabarrus County hands Cabarrus County Schools $1. And then the Cabarrus County Schools takes that $1 and has to give it to the charter school because the student left them. That's what Kelly's saying about passing through.
Right, and I
We
understand.
give it to her and she has to give it back,
Right.
okay? When the state does it, or the feds, they don't even go to the Cabarrus County Schools, they go straight to the charter school.
Okay.
So, if she's got a student population of 100, and she has no growth, she's getting funded for getting $100, and she's giving away every charter school kid $1, and she's not being harmed because that kid left her system, she doesn't have to support it. Well, in retrospect, she got 110 students because she had growth, and she still sent those charter students away, and we didn't give her $10 more for the new students. She's now in the hole.
But if there's 10 new students, she's getting $10 more, correct?
We're not giving her new money.
We haven't given her the new money for the.
We didn't fund the additional
We
growth.
didn't.
But how
That's
do
why
we
she kept
know?
saying, if you fund growth, then it's a zero game for her.
But
if
those
we
10
don't
students
fund
will be in Cabarrus County schools, right?
They
Will
could
be.
be, and
Yes,
then she
sir.
would get $10 new dollars.
You gonna,
No.
well, you got
No,
110
because we're still not
students.
funding.
Yeah.
All 110 of them's going to the charter school?
No, sir, no.
10 of them stay in Cabarrus County.
The 10 new ones would come
Right.
into our system with, the ones leaving the system, the money follows the kid.
Right.
So the new ones coming in, if we're keeping it flat spending, then they would have to make adjustments, or we would have to increase their funding to keep them at their current spending.
Okay, so what if none of the new kids go to the charter school? They're still not or what if all the new kids do go to the charter school?
They
Still gotta pay.
break even.
You still have to pay for
No,
it.
now they're
If they
giving
live in
$1
Cabarrus County,
away
you still
for
have
each
to pay
one of the
for it.
kids that went to charter school that we didn't give $1 to
So
them
they're only
for.
getting paid 90 for 90.
Right.
But that's only if we receive more children than go to the charter school. And
Right, that's
what they've
correct.
told us is that the charter schools are going to take 771. They're anticipating growth of 753, so they're going to be a net loss of 18 kids.
But they're funding the growth, and they have to keep funding the charter school kids too.
And if those kids have not been in our school system previously, if they've been in a private school or homeschooled,
Yeah.
they never hit our school system, and they go straight to the charter school, the school system still has to send $1 for each one
If
of
they
them.
live in the county. That's our understanding.
And so they never got into our funding formula
Right.
because they were not in the public schools.
Well, then we can just get in a position of funding for the expansion and then do a reversion at the end of the year. We've never done it in the past, but we have that authority and we have that right.
Explain that.
Just like, well, not just like, the state.
I understand, we fund the expansion,
We fund the expansion at 771.
right?
And instead of having a 20-day number, we say, well, where are you in day 120 or day 100? And if they're at only an expansion of 600 instead of 771, we pull back 171, the value of 171 kids.
You know, what the state does, after the second month, when they average and they come up with, this is the number we're
Yeah.
funding. Well, I'm sorry, they come up with their projection, which has that increase in it. And then they say, okay, at the end of 20 days, tell us your number. 20 days means 20 school days, so 4 weeks. tell us your number. At the end of the next 4 weeks, tell us your number. They'll do it, whichever is higher. And then they say, okay, that's what we're funding, and we're not going to fund anymore. But if that number goes either way by 100, they don't do any different. If it's higher than 100, they'll fund extra. If it's lower than 100, they'll take back money. So they adjust. So if we were going to do something, you know, you need to have some kind of leeway in there. If it were
Let's just follow the state plan.
at whatever the time, the anointed time, if they're up another 100, we would need to
What if they
Up
had
fund another 100.
Yeah, I'm saying,
400 more students?
if we
So,
follow
I'm
the
just
state
saying-
plan, if we follow the state's numbers, say,
We gotta fund
the state
500
says
more of them.
you're gonna
We
grow
don't
at
have the money.
500,
What if we did?
and we fund the expansion of 500, and if it goes up 100 or down 100, we keep the same funding. If it I mean, we can do the same thing.
So where would we benefit that, you're saying they're estimating growth,
Per kid.
and we're just checking?
Yeah, what if they estimate the growth at 1,000, and we funded it at the expansion of 1,000, and the growth is only 250? Well, we've lost 750 times $1,500.
So have you been doing this every year forever?
We've never asked for a reversion.
Well,
The state does, but the county
The
has.
state does. The county has never asked for a reversion.
Right.
Well, we never really had a problem with the charter schools is what's
But this one
somewhat
doesn't address the
creating.
charter schools.
Well, the two things that, in years past, when it was growing differently, when the growth wasn't what was expected,
Right.
we got hit to the tune of a lot of money, but we've gotten better at selecting the number and figuring out that number.
Why don't,
Who's
why,
gonna check the charter schools? As to how many
she
students?
does
they-
every
school
single
system.
month. She
Who
requires,
does?
Cabarrus County Schools and Kannapolis City Schools, every single month requires a list of the students who are attending that charter school, which they are then supposed to verify that they truly live in Cabarrus County, and then they send their 1/10 of our allotment, because it's
But
a
if they
tenth
just-
every month.
If they just send you a list every month, how you know them students in that school?
they're verifying.
They have to
Who
verify.
verifies it?
They have a
They're
staff member that has to
verifying.
verify it. I don't know how they.
They're
I don't know who
verifying
does
they
that.
live in the county, but maybe not particularly a student.
I
but-
mean, is the charter school doing their own verification?
No.
No. Charter school, I'm gonna say, I'm the head of charter school, I'm gonna send you a list. And if I put somebody on there that I shouldn't have, I hope you don't catch it. And I would say the charter schools are honest about it, I would
They are.
hope.
So
But you
with,
get a list, and then, because before you're gonna cut me a check, you're gonna verify those addresses and make sure that a Huntersville address is truly in Cabarrus County, which could be. They could be in Skybrook, have a Huntersville mailing address. You know, there's some areas heading over toward Charlotte that, you know, it's the same road. It's just a matter, you have to double check the street address. I mean, there have been times where somebody 3 houses up in Mecklenburg County walked them over and got them on the school bus stop, claimed their neighbor. So, I mean, there's some issues with that always. It can't be perfect, but, and then if I verify that you have 547 students this month, that's what I pay you for. If next month you have 560 students, that's what I pay you for.
In other words, they're doing the work to verify all the students, and not getting paid for it to send them the money.
They
They're
need to
just
verify the
verifying it.
students, or else they're gonna pay too much.
all right, so the reversion plan would be very similar of just paying per pupil basis of the number of students. I would rather do that.
And it would be
See, I just
per
think it's better to,
pupil.
go ahead.
I'm just gonna ask, it'd be per pupil, both in Cabarrus County schools and that they were paying for in charter schools.
Right. So, because then it would truly be a flow-through.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to that.
It's just,
It's-
it's
okay.
just tough being able to pick that first number.
And the problem is that if you lose 5 students in 5th grade, and each of them is at a different school, that's not gonna impact that you can't cut a teacher. Okay, I mean, they're gonna sign a contract with the teacher at the beginning of the school year to hire that teacher for the school year. And that teacher's class size is gonna fluctuate all year long. I mean, you're gonna have students that come in, you'll have students that literally, we're having exams next week, they'll enroll today.
But it doesn't
And then-
fluctuate so much where there's completely an empty classroom.
It's not gonna fluctuate that one school is gonna lose a whole teaching position, but the point would be, they've already signed a contract for a teacher. So if you're picking every month where it's gonna go up and down or something, that's going to be very hard for us to track too.
And so if we do a reversion,
I mean, what they
because
would
their
rather-
enrollment has dropped, their expenses have not dropped.
They're going to
Teacher-wise-
sign teacher contracts
Right.
in August before the teachers show up on the first day.
Well, maybe that's where
And they
their
have a contract for the
contingency picks up. It's a gamble. I mean, they sign that contract and that fluctuates.
But if my class size fluctuates 1 or 2 students, you can't get rid of me.
Well, they don't have to. 2 students, they're not going to get rid
We cut
of.
funding, 2 students here, 3 students here.
But we're not talking about, I mean.
But there
if
might
you're
be
doing-
2
you're not
more
talking about
students.
One or two, you're talking about a larger number.
Well, it could be 2
Total,
students from your
system-wide,
class,
Right.
but 2's going to be
Not necessarily
added.
per school, per grade, per
Right.
position. I think reversions are horrid.
And so
I
if
mean,
we-
that's just passing the buck. That's just that's what Fletcher said. Yeah, well, we're going to give you the same pot of money, and we're just going to make you make the decisions and kind of push it on down there, which is true. And they can make decisions. I mean, I think some of those things, if they remove the cap, there are a lot of decisions that could be made. But the reversion idea from the state is not a good thing, because what the state says is, well, we gave you, pick a number, $100 million, and that's what we're going to report. We're not going to tell anybody that we made you give us back $5 million, because we're kind of moving the numbers around enough so that nobody can really track it very well. That's what a reversion does.
But they just really have to manage the money of, I mean, you lose 2 students in your classroom, probably 2 more is going to move in at some other classroom, and it doesn't matter about the schools, it matters about their per pupil funding.
Are you going to increase the funding in the 4th month when a student moves in? Historically, I think if you ask for attendance numbers, you're going to see that from when the number is set, okay, but the state funds, and that number is set before May, that number's going to increase.
So the state.
System-wide.
So the state increases their,
No. The state says, this is our number, this is what we're funding. So in high-growth years, school system could gain 500 students and not get another penny for it. And they had to, that's why class sizes get higher during the year. But it's a moving target.
is it generally 500? Is it generally?
Every year will depend. They'd have to give you a historical, I mean, no, it's not that right now because they're not looking at growing that much. But when it was high growth, you could very well have that. I don't know what they've grown. That's a number they can, if you want to ask for that, ask what their number historically was, the number that they got funded, and ask for their number in the 10th month, the end of the year, how many do they really have?
You got the ADM spreadsheet? Yeah.
Yeah, we've got the ADM spreadsheet of
We're
how
just-
it's
But I'm just
changed.
saying.
for-
Yeah, it changes
Just look
from-
at it, we don't need to write this second.
Yeah, we don't-
And if we were going to do that, ask for a reversion, then would we be receptive to them coming back to us in the 7th month of the school year, saying, you didn't fund as many, we've got more, give us some more money.
Well, maybe you wouldn't fund them at the full 1,500, it would be prorated.
Hey, it boils down to getting, or figuring out what the number is going, the additional kids are going to be. And I would imagine over the past 10 years, they've gotten better, because the state lowballs it, and some school systems, I'm not going to say Cabarrus County school system, highballs it, because it falls somewhere in the middle. It's just a matter of, I think, just looking at the numbers and seeing where the numbers are and seeing how far off they are.
And I would agree.
You know, that.
Except this new charter school with that big of a number could be very volatile depending on how well they do, how good a job the parents feel like they are doing.
So,
Well, and I think, Kannapolis is looking at 27 a class, all over the whole system. They can absorb a certain amount without having to truly add another teacher. And Cabarrus is that way. How many, based on their growth, do they really need 30 more teachers, or do they need, is it going to be absorbed throughout based on their class sizes? And that's where that cohort number comes in, where you look at every grade level and you see how it's moving up. I know that when mine went through school, through elementary school with Megan, there were 3 classes in her grade level, but I believe with Ben, there were only 2. So as her grade moved up, somebody went from 2nd grade to 3rd grade because they needed it, and before her was 2. So there was that little bubble, and some teacher always had to move around. That's why they're licensed in every grade level. And you might get moved up for a couple years to 4th grade, but then
Move
all of a
back.
sudden Ben came along and they only needed 2 teachers. So now where were they going to move that one? To another school, or what were they going to do? I mean, they do that all the time. You know, if they are, I guess the point is that at this point in time, the recommendation is not to fund any of those new students. So in order to hold them harmless,
Yeah.
we would need to fund whatever that number is that's determined, 771 or whatever number that is, and then it's up to them to figure out how many students they're going to send money to the charter school. And they're still going to be able to operate because they're not losing money. But if we don't fund the growth number, then they're automatically in the hole for whatever that 1.2 million for the charter school. Because they're still going to be educating the same number of students, but they're going to have funding for 771 students less.
Are you wanting to
Or
see
something.
what we fund off the April number that we get the estimate from the state? And then we've had a huge discussion over the last couple of years, whether it's the 20-day number, the 30-day number, the 90-day number, or whatever, as to which one the state funds them off of. Are you wanting to see what that determined number is after school's been open for a little while, so you can see the difference between what the state estimates and what really they're getting paid for from the state?
That's what it should be.
Yeah.
Because we have that spreadsheet all but 2 years, and we can get Kelly and Will to verify that that is truly the number the state funded them for that school year, no matter what we called it. Because I think that spreadsheet says it's the 20-day number, but we had a great debate on what that number was called.
I thought it was always, I thought we finally settled on the 20-day number.
It's the 20-day number, it's the 40-day number, and it's the higher of the 2.
No, but, yeah, but when we're talking about
But-
funding, we're talking everything, it was consistently the 20-day number.
And I think that's what we need to decide. And
Yeah.
we could, in essence, make it as policy that what we will fund is the ADM amount, this stated ADM amount for their 20-day number.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're going to have to make a payment prior to that, and I don't know if you adjust it. What do you do if the number comes up less after they've started school?
Well,
By
that
the end of
depends on your-
September, if that number's
your
less
policy.
than what you originally funded, I guess you can adjust it.
Oh, you can adjust the 1/12 amount anytime.
So, but I think that's what, I would rather see it, instead of saying, here's your money and now we're gonna take some back, let's just come up with a way that they can calculate it, our staff can calculate it, and that's how it goes. Whatever that ADM dollar amount is.
The only time I'm aware of the number, the ADM number that the county has based our funding on has been off is when our population was just going nutso, and it was anticipated of 1,500 students, and we only got 1,200 students. I mean, that was the only time that I know of, and Mrs. Dubois has been doing this a number of years, so that's what I'm saying is, our numbers are probably very consistent. I mean, within a handful. So
We'll update that spreadsheet
that's all
and
I'm
have it
saying,
for
is
you
just kind
tomorrow.
of, that's what I'm saying, is look at those numbers and see how far off we are.
So
And I think you're right, that they are much better at it. There was a while when we were growing so much that.
State couldn't keep up.
And vice versa.
State couldn't keep up, and Jim Amendam's number was a much better number than the state's number,
Yeah.
and finally the state said, okay, I don't know where you're coming up with yours, but we're gonna go with yours, and that was a couple years, because his number, whatever the algorithm was better. Now that things have really, really slowed down,
It's easier.
I'm
And that-
thinking it's
and that-
easier and they can better
That takes
identify.
care of the reversion issue, is that we're truly not that far off on a year-and-a-year basis. There was a number of years that it ended up being a huge number because it was throwing a dart at the board and seeing where it is, because you just didn't know what was going to happen.
The better they get the number. One year, there may be extra money, the other year may be
A little bit
less
lower.
money.
I mean,
So it's going to average out, so.
So if you'll just look at those.
Yeah.
But the best thing for us would be to budget off of what they tell us in April for the state estimate, and then adjust it when the 20-day number comes out. And we can retro pay the difference if we need to.
If we do that, then we're going to set aside money in a contingency
Absolutely.
to be able to.
But we'll have a historical pattern to look back at, too.
Yeah.
So not for tomorrow, probably, at 8:20, but for our work session next week.
Next Monday.
Well, they got during the day tomorrow before here, and they've got, today's Wednesday, they still have Friday. But
Friday and Monday.
And you'd have Monday. If you can try to get that kind of hone in on what that would look
So
like.
you're looking at the difference in the April numbers and the final numbers that the state pays.
And
If you
actually,
just-
what
If you
we-
just talk to Pam, she'll be able to help
Yeah.
you understand what I'm referencing.
And-
missing 2 years of numbers.
Okay, so.
And then update this
That's
with
no
that
problem.
information, because I'd like to know if you said we have, what, 1.8 million to decide what we're going to do with?
Yes.
Which is not necessarily all for Cabarrus County Schools. I'll make sure I say that. But we need to know what that number is and
Yeah.
how that's going to plug in if we fund those growth students.
Well,
And that 1.8 now, that includes your contingency that you would typically keep somewhere 3, 4, 500,000, whatever you feel comfortable with. It already includes those potential increases in salaries based on what the state's decision is. And then whatever's left over, you can use it for one-time money or one-time projects or recurring. If you use all of it for recurring, then we're going to have to look out
Yeah.
in this 5-year plan and recalculate a little bit for you, so.
now, just for me to clarify, the increase in children for both school systems is 965 kids. So in order to keep the ADM the same, if we were to take the 965,
Shouldn't be 965.
Oh,
Cabarrus was 771 and Kannapolis is
70.
27.
Yeah,
Yeah,
27.
well, how come I've got them going from 33,842 to 34,806?
They said 4,037 going to 4,064. Was the number I wrote down earlier.
I checked the formula.
But you can verify.
Yeah, we can get those numbers. That's not a big deal.
But basically, what we do for Cabarrus, we got to do for Kannapolis, correct?
Portion.
So are you saying we would take, it would be great if we could come up with a funding formula. And if you're saying we would take the change in student population each year, estimated, times 1554.03, which is the current expense funding, excluding school nurses, then that would be what we would fund in additional current expense for schools.
We'd like to see what that number is to decide if that's what we can afford to fund.
Okay.
I think that's what you're saying. We're not guaranteeing that's what it is, but we need to see what the numbers are so we can figure out what we can and cannot do. Other questions? I know you have some.
I don't have enough information about this salary study to see, I've been hearing about it for 90 days, and I've yet to see it. So I'm not comfortable in adopting their request to fund a salary study that we don't have enough information on. So I'm sorry for the teachers, but we don't have the data to say, yes, that's something we need to do.
We'll get that.
Okay, I'm just saying, and I'm not going to knowing my history, I'll probably have a lot of questions. So there's no way I'm going to be able to digest it, understand it, to talk intelligently enough about it between now and adopting a budget. So I'm not comfortable in putting that in the budget right now.
Well, and the other comment, just to make a comment, because I agree with you, I don't understand that. And if what we normally do is a supplement and the locally paid teachers, if the salary study says every employee needs to have a 2% raise, then we would now be supplementing the state's salary for teachers. And we don't want to go there.
Well,
I mean, the only thing I think we should look at is, personally, would be matching whatever the state does and look at, do we want to do something to the supplement, which I don't believe has been increased in
6
a
years.
very, very long time.
Yeah.
And that's why my recommendation to the county manager was the COLA. If we give our staff a COLA do the supplement, the same COLA.
Just to point out too, I know what the confusion is when Cabarrus says they only went up 771 students. They're comparing what the state adjusted them to last year to the state estimate of this year. We do it from state estimate to state estimate.
Yes.
We never get the gap in the middle.
Right.
So we will have to fund 965 new students.
And 965 times the 1554.03 is $1,499,639. So it's $1.5 million.
Okay.
Is that both systems at
Yes.
965 is both
Yes, that's
systems?
both systems.
Thank you.
So it gives you a rough idea of how much money we're talking about.
If the policy says that, you can make the policy say what you want it to say.
If I understood you correctly in what you were trying to do, I think getting a funding formula is a great idea.
I'm not sold on the idea of adding 20 additional teachers. I think it's not prudent to add 20 new teachers when there are 142 existing teacher assistants that are getting terminated. So that if we're going to fund any positions, I think there seems to be more bang for the buck in regards to additional TAs and not teachers. So I'm not comfortable in expanding 20 new teachers. And I am concerned about how technology is better than a teacher or teacher assistant. I didn't get the requisite needing attention from a computer as I would have a teacher or a teacher's assistant that would be able to help me understand the importance of what I'm trying to be taught. So I think it needs to be TAs and not teachers, in my opinion. I don't know if there's any other discussion on that.
Yeah, one point, I know Commissioner Poole, you brought this up, was the utility cost, 9.6% increase. I'd like to know if, I know you were discussing whether or not there was an approval for that, but I think that'd be interesting to know.
Do you know what Kyle used for his increase?
Depends on the utility commission.
We'll find out.
Well, I think,
I think
and what he just said, we'll figure out what we put in there for it and see what, I don't believe it was, I just think it was some
wasn't that much.
pushback.
No, I think ours is 4
Yeah.
or 5%.
Yeah, Duke Power got a lot of pushback on
They
that one,
did.
so I think that needs to be a whatever actually passes number and not a projected number.
Well, the utility commission was gonna give it to them, and the attorney general went back after them, wasn't it?
I believe so.
So the utility commission
I
might
can't
come and give
remember
it to them.
exactly what the deal was, but I agree with Krista, that'd be nice to get
They
some
got it stacked
clarification.
now with ex-Duke Power employees, so they might get it.
The, piggybacking on what Commissioner Meisner was saying in regards to the return on investment,
Okay, hang on one second, we need to change the tape.
so
Just hang on one second, he's gonna stick his head back out and then we'll start again.
we can talk